Brianna's scream was the kind that cracks straight down the center of a quiet room. "No, no, don't turn the lights off. Please, someone turn them back on." "Please." She dropped to her knees on the wooden floor. Her white Christmas wedding dress dragging through a puddle of spilled perfume mascara streaked across her cheeks like black ash. 200 guests stood around her phones, raised high screens glowing like a circle of vultures closing in on a dying animal. A microphone left open by accident carried her sobbing voice across the entire hall. "Why are the lights off? Why is everything gone? Tyler, where are you?" The groom was nowhere. Her family stood frozen. The wedding planner had already fled. And the giant banner, "A Christmas Wedding to Remember," fell crooked behind her, looking like a cruel joke now. Then a cold emergency notice lit up the projector. "Account frozen, event support canceled." Brianna spun around, desperate for someone, anyone to save her, but even her closest friends stepped away, avoiding her eyes. Everything collapsed. Everything on Christmas night. And I, the father who had been banned from the wedding because I didn't fit their image, stood outside the resort gate in the Montana snow, watching the disaster unfold through the security feed. I wasn't smiling. I wasn't celebrating. What I felt was a deep old ache, a pain someone should have faced a long time ago. My name is Floyd Chambers, a high-voltage line technician, a widower, a father pushed out of his own son's life. And that night, as Brianna screamed under the emergency lights, I knew one thing for certain. This collapse wasn't an accident. It was a consequence, a reckoning, the price of shutting a father out of his son's world. But what you just saw, that was only the ending. If you want to understand why a father like me ended up standing in the snow watching his son's wedding crumble to dust, you have to go back 1 year. Back to Christmas 2023. The last day, I still believed my family was whole. The day everything truly began. Christmas of 2023 wasn't special at all. No fireworks, no thick postcard snow, no laughter echoing through the kitchen the way it did when Tyler was a little boy. Just a 62-year-old man, me standing under the wooden porch of my cabin in Helena, Montana, watching my breath disappear into the cold. And just one small hope that pulled me out of bed early that morning, that Tyler would stop by, like he always used to. I got up at 6, made a simple pot roast, lit the wood stove, hung the old Christmas lights my wife Laura used to love. She passed in 2015, but every winter I still took those lights out. Not for decoration, but because it gave me a reason to feel like I still had a family. I made coffee, then another cup when the first went cold. By 10 a.m. I was checking my phone every 3 minutes. No call, no text. I told myself, he's busy, it's the end of the year. But deep down I knew that wasn't the truth. Tyler had changed. In a way I couldn't reach anymore. I sat at the old wooden table where he used to sit at 9 years old, building model airplanes with me. "Dad, can we go hiking tomorrow? Dad, can we go fishing? Dad, when I grow up, I want to be just like you." I could almost hear his small footsteps racing down the hallway. Laura stirring a pot in the kitchen. Laughter. Warmth. But those sounds were only ghosts now. At noon my phone buzzed. A short, polite message, but colder than the wind outside, "Dad, I'm at Brianna's family's place. Let's do Christmas another time." I read it again and again. But the feeling stayed the same, like someone tapping a knife against my ribs. Not enough to kill, but enough to hurt. No apology, no plan. Just a hollow another time. I put the phone down. My hand shook, not from age, but because I understood something I didn't want to accept. This would be my first Christmas alone. I didn't turn the TV on, didn't play music. I walked straight into the bedroom to the old cedar trunk where I kept Laura's things. I opened it. The smell of old wood and lavender lifted into the air, pulling me back to a different life. Inside was a yellow envelope with worn edges. Her handwriting, for Floyd. Open only when you need direction. I had opened it once after she died. The second time was that Christmas. Inside, Laura wrote, "I worry that one day our son will chase a world where men like you are never respected. If that day comes, please don't break. Let him learn gratitude the hard way, and trust me, he will come home." I folded the letter and held it to my chest for a long moment. Her words didn't comfort me. They tightened around my throat. I left the room and stepped onto the porch. The sky was gray now. The Christmas lights flickered weakly. That afternoon I drove to visit some relatives, dropping off New Year invitations. When I walked into my nephew's house, I saw something that made my stomach drop. Sitting on their table and on another family's mantel and another's were wedding invitations. Tyler and Brianna's wedding invitations. I picked one up. Heavy cardstock, silver lettering, a red ribbon tied by hand. The venue, an upscale resort in Jackson Hole. But what froze me in place wasn't the luxury. It was the simple, devastating fact everyone in the family had received one. Except me. I asked quietly, "When did you get this?" "About 2 weeks ago, Uncle Floyd. Tyler hand-delivered it. He said you'd already gotten yours." I pressed the edge of the invitation so hard it dug into my fingers. The room tilted for a second. Voices around me blurred into a distant hum. There was only one thought in my mind. Brianna made sure I never saw my invitation. She carved me out of the picture on purpose. This wasn't a mistake. This was a warning. By the time I returned home, night had fallen. Snow drifted down like powdered sugar. I stood on the porch, staring at those flickering Christmas lights, their unsteady glow matching the way my heart felt. And right then I knew Christmas 2023 was the last year I stood in the soft, naive hope that my family still held together. From here on, peace was over. Early 2024 settled over Helena like a long gray shadow. The kind of winter where the cold doesn't slap its seeps, where the wind plays through the power lines like a hollow flute. I went back to my shift on the North Line crew, climbing poles the way I'd done for 3 decades. Harness, safety hooks, the same old pair of insulating gloves. But that season, my toolbox wasn't the only thing that felt heavy. Tyler hadn't said much since Christmas. No check-ins, no, "How are you holding up after the storm, Dad?" Instead, I saw pictures of him online: new jacket, expensive chinos, steak dinners, red wine in oversized glasses, things he used to call fancy nonsense. And me, I looked at those photos the way a man looks at a stranger wearing his son's face. One night in late February, Tyler called. Not to apologize, not to ask how I was doing, but to invite me to a dinner with Brianna's family. His voice sounded tight, like he was reading lines someone else wrote. "Dad, they want to meet you. They think you should know the family before the wedding." The word they came out firm. My name, however, barely had weight. I said yes, not because I wanted to, but because I needed to see whether the world Tyler was chasing still had space for me in it. The dinner was held in a house folks around Helena call a showplace, a home that looks lived in, but only by the cameras. White walls, warm golden lights, a dining table twice the size of my living room, a spotless piano that had never felt a child's sticky fingers. Everything was perfect. Too perfect. So perfect, it felt empty. Brianna opened the door with a smile wide enough for a magazine cover and eyes cold enough to cut glass. "Hi, Mr. Chambers. We're so glad you could make it," she said, but her tone was hollow, practiced. She looked me up and down like she was inspecting a package the delivery driver got wrong. I wore clean denim khakis, work boots polished on the tips, what I'd wear to church or a school award night when Tyler was young. But I swear, I saw the corner of her mouth twitch upward, a tiny smug lift, the kind people give when they believe they're standing on a higher floor. Inside, the Lowell family was already seated, her mother's salon fresh hair skin pulled tight like she'd stepped out from behind a spa curtain. Her father red tie gold watch and the gestures of a man who wants you to notice both. Her sister wearing heels inside the house. 2 relatives or so they claimed stiff smiles rehearsed greetings. I sat down and listened as they talked about golf tournaments at the country club. $10,000 cruises. Italian furniture almost nobody can get. Designer bags spoken of like sacred relics. No one asked where I worked. No one asked about my life in Helena. No one asked how I raised a boy alone after Laura died. I was a shadow placed at the end of the table. Tyler sat beside Brianna, posture straight, voice different. He spoke like he was imitating a dialect from a life he'd never lived. Each word was shaped too carefully, as if he was afraid someone would hear the Montana still left in him. I watched him through dinner. This was the same kid who used to run after me through snowdrifts begging to learn how to cut wire, now sitting cross-legged like some junior banker giving a lecture. I didn't speak, but something inside me quietly cracked, sharp, thin, unsettling. When dinner ended, Brianna suggested everyone move to the living room for wine. I excused myself to wash my hands. And that's when everything shifted. I hadn't even stepped into the restroom yet. I was standing just around the corner when I heard whispers coming from behind the half-open door. A bridesmaid's voice. So, his dad's actually coming to the wedding. I thought they weren't going to let him show up. Then Brianna's voice, soft but sharp enough to slice fabric. I hope not. As long as he doesn't show up in those work shirts, it would look embarrassing. A soft laugh. Honestly, he just looks poor. Then Brianna again, the sentence that hit me like a tight fist to the sternum. My wedding won't look perfect if he's in the pictures. I froze. Not in anger. Anger would have been easier. I froze the way a man freezes when he realizes the world he thought he understood has quietly rearranged itself without him. I walked into the restroom, turned on the faucet, and stared at my reflection. A man still strong, still working, still climbing poles younger men avoided. A man who'd earned respect, not bought it. And yet in their world, I was a blemish, an inconvenience, a flaw in the photograph. When I stepped out, Tyler was standing right there, right outside the door. He looked at me. His eyes flickered away too fast. "Dad, you okay?" he asked. I stared straight into him. "I'm fine. Are you?" He didn't answer. That night as I walked out of the Lowell house, snow drifted in fine light flakes. My hands were cold, but my head burned like I touched a live wire. Driving home, I whispered into the dark cabin of the truck, "Laura, your warning was right." The first crack had formed, and I knew it wouldn't be the last. After that dinner at the Lowell house, I honestly tried to smooth the edges of what I'd felt. I told myself maybe I'd been too harsh. Maybe Tyler was just adapting to a new environment. Maybe people from Brianna's world didn't know how to act around someone like me, a man who works with his hands, not investments. But then March rolled in, and every comforting thought I fed myself began to crumble piece by piece. One weekday afternoon, Tyler called. His voice was different, sharp, uneasy, like he was walking while talking, trying not to be overheard. "Dad, I need you to come to Brianna's again this weekend. They want to take some engagement photos with the families for the wedding program." I paused long enough for him to notice. "They want me in the photos." Tyler hesitated too long. "They want the full family included." That wasn't the truth. There was something wedged between his words. Shame, fear, or maybe both. But I said yes, because regardless of how things felt, he was still my son, and a father always takes one more step toward his child, even when he knows the ground is breaking. The Lowell home was bright enough to make your eyes ache, the kind of brightness that doesn't feel warm, just exposed. Right inside the entry sat a thick black leather-bound album, The Lowell Legacy. Gold letters engraved deep. Curious, I opened it. What I saw wasn't a family history. It was a presentation. Every photograph was studio-made, perfect lighting, perfect posture, perfect clothes, perfect expressions. No candid moments. No imperfect smiles. No pictures of messy Christmas mornings, scraped knees, backyard fire pits, or birthdays with crooked candles. Just page after page of staged perfection. I kept flipping. Something was off subtly at first, then loudly once I noticed it. Same photographer, same studio, same lighting setup, same editing style. Yet the album dated back 13 years. I didn't say a word. But a slow, cold feeling spread through my chest. Real families change. Real families grow, shift, age, wrinkle, stumble. The Lowells stayed frozen, like mannequins dressed in new outfits every year, and called it history. I gently set the album down. In the living room, Brianna's mother was showing off her shopping haul silk scarves, designer handbags, a pair of heels, every single one still hanging with tags and barcode stickers. Wealthy people don't flaunt receipts. They don't need proof. Her father leaned on the kitchen island, subtly tugging his sleeve so the gold watch peeked out. A watch that to the untrained eye might pass as expensive. But not to someone like me, someone who can identify metals and materials at a glance. It was plating. The cheap kind that flakes after a few months. I've worked in rich neighborhoods for decades. I know the difference between silent money, loud money, and no money trying very hard. The Lowells were proudly, loudly, the third. Meanwhile, Tyler floated through the room like he belonged there, laughing too loud, speaking too carefully, talking about investment portfolios, boutique resorts, luxury lifestyles. None of those words were born in him. They were taught or forced. It made me want to step outside and breathe real air. As Brianna passed by, she straightened Tyler's scarf, brushing off an imaginary speck of dust. Not affectionately, but the way someone adjusts a lamp before taking a photo for an online listing. Then came the moment that cemented everything. We were about to head outside for photos when one of the bridesmaids whispered the kind of whisper meant to be heard. "Are you sure his family is wealthy? They don't look it." Brianna giggled, not embarrassed, just amused. "Not wealthy like that," she said. "But you remember I once tried with that Colorado rancher. Didn't go anywhere. This time, I want something more presentable." More giggling, like high school girls mocking a substitute teacher. Then Brianna added a line that sliced deeper than all the rest. "Just keep the image clean. That's the most important thing." Image. Always image. My jaw tightened, but I said nothing. The photo shoot was a performance. The photographer directed every angle like a Broadway director. Tilt your shoulders. Chin up. Let's keep him a little farther left. The composition balances better. I didn't miss the subtext. I was being moved, positioned like a defective piece of furniture that disrupts symmetry. Tyler stood next to Brianna, hand on her waist, the other tucked into his coat pocket in a way he must have practiced in a mirror. When the flash went off, he looked hollow, a smile drawn on with a shaky hand. It struck me then. Was he still mine? Or had he been absorbed, rewritten into the story the Lowells were crafting? That evening back in my cabin, I cooked something small and sat down with my phone, scrolling without thinking. Then a post appeared from the wedding resort itself. A glossy photo of Tyler and Brianna in the snow captioned, "The Lowell family proudly sponsors the entire winter wedding experience." I read it twice, then a third time. "The Lowell family proudly sponsors entire wedding." But Tyler had told me, eyes shining, chest puffed out. "Dad, I'm paying for this. I want to prove myself." So who was telling the truth? My son? Or the people dressing him up like a mannequin in their fantasy brochure? I zoomed in on the photo. Brianna's grip on his arm was tight, possessive. Tyler's hand was balled into a fist. His smile didn't reach his eyes. That kind of smile only appears on people trapped somewhere they can't name. Yet, in that moment, something heavy settled in me. Tyler wasn't stepping into a new world. He was being pulled into a machine, one built from fake gold-rented images and stories polished until they had no truth left. A machine that needed him more than it loved him. I turned off the phone, sat still in the dark, listened to the cold Montana wind press against the cabin, and I understood something I'd tried not to see. The Lowell mask wasn't slipping. It had never been real to begin with. And when it finally shattered, my son would be standing right underneath it. Summer of 2024 came through Helena like a dry wind, sharp, relentless, stripping the color out of everything it touched. The high-voltage lines hummed louder as the heat climbed. I was running longer shifts than usual because the northern outskirts were upgrading their whole system. Hard work, long hours, but familiar. What wasn't familiar was the feeling that my own life was shifting underneath me, like someone else had grabbed the wheel while I wasn't looking. One Tuesday afternoon after a 12-hour shift, I came home and saw an unfamiliar envelope wedged in my mail stack. Not spam, not a flyer, not a utility bill. I know the color and weight of those envelopes the way a rancher knows his cattle. This one was white clean and stamped with the logo of a cell phone company in Billings. I didn't have an account with them. I hadn't opened a new phone line. I barely understood half the smartphone plans young folks use these days. I tore it open. Inside was a statement, a bill, a smartphone purchased in my name, a data plan, accessories, nearly $2,000 charged to an account I had never opened, and printed boldly at the top were my full name and my social security number. A cold shock went down my spine, the kind you feel when you almost touch a live wire by mistake. I whispered to myself, "No, that's not me. That's not me." Outside the window, the power lines snapped and crackled in the heat. Inside me, something snapped too. For decades, I guarded my personal information like my life depended on it, because in my line of work, one small mistake can take down an entire grid. And now the grid that had failed was me. That night, I opened my old laptop and logged into my credit report, line by line, page by page. Then I saw them. 2 strange inquiries, 2 separate dates 2 weeks apart, both from financing partners, both marked clearly credit check requested by Tyler Chambers. My son. The boy I raised alone. The boy Laura told me to protect long after she was gone. The boy she warned me might someday forget gratitude and would need to learn it again. These inquiries weren't mistakes. They listed file numbers, dates, purpose account opening. I closed the laptop with hands that weren't as steady as they once were. I didn't want to believe it, but the truth was printed right there. The next morning I called Tyler. He answered quickly, voice clipped, distracted. "Dad, I'm in a meeting. Can you make it quick?" I asked plainly. "Tyler, did you open a phone under my name?" Silence. Not long, but long enough to tell the truth. Then he let out a nervous laugh. "Dad, it's probably a mix-up. Cell companies screw up all the time. Just don't worry about it." I kept my voice low. "And the 2 credit inquiries, are those mistakes too?" He exhaled sharply. "Dad, I have to go. Seriously. We'll talk later." He hung up. I stood there a long time, phone still at my ear, listening to the dead tone echo like the knife twist of a truth I wasn't ready to face. For the first time in my life, I felt like my son wasn't my son anymore. That weekend, I got in my truck and drove to the Bozeman apartment Tyler shared with Brianna. A brand new complex, too polished, too shiny for young people living on starter salaries. Glass doors, a spotless lobby, hallways washed in warm artificial light, and that faint citrus essential oil smell, fake elegance pumped through vents. I didn't tell them I was coming. I needed to see Tyler's eyes. I needed the truth straight from him. I knocked. No answer. I knocked again. Then I heard their voices clear through the thin apartment door. Brianna's first, Cold. Precise. Let me say it one more time so you understand I don't want him in any of our wedding photos. Not a single one. Got it. I froze. Then Tyler's voice soft-strained Bree. He's my dad. I can't just... Yes, you can, she snapped. And you will if you want us to look like we belong together. No hard hats, no work boots, no old pickup truck. I'm not marrying into a laborer family. Don't ruin my image. Silence. Long. Heavy. Then Tyler whispered, barely audible except in the empty hallway. Okay, I'll talk to him. I stepped back. My stomach dropped like someone cut the line I was hanging on. I didn't knock again. I didn't wait for him to open the door. I walked away. Down the warm hallway that felt suddenly freezing. Down the stairs. Across the lot. I reached my truck and gripped the roof with both hands just to keep myself upright. The boy I once lifted onto my shoulders to watch fireworks was now discussing how to erase me from his wedding photos. That night my cabin felt emptier than it ever had. I hung up my hard hat, put my old work gloves into the drawer, sat down in my worn-out chair and turned on the small lamp beside it. I pulled out a picture of Tyler when he was 8, wearing a red sweater beside our Christmas tree, missing a front tooth, laughing like the world would always stay kind. I stared at that picture until my eyes burned. Then I whispered, Ty, where are you going? And who are you letting lead you there? I didn't sleep. Not until sunrise cracked across the sky and I finally accepted the truth. This wasn't misunderstanding. It wasn't youthful arrogance. It wasn't a bride with a sharp tongue. This was deception. Intentional, calculated. And if they had started by using my name for a cell phone, this was only the beginning. Standing in that hallway, smelling that cheap citrus oil, hearing them plan their image, a line was drawn, a line I never thought would exist between me and my son. And just like that, the family war began. In the middle of a Montana summer, when the ground cracked open from the heat, my heart felt more like January than July. After hearing Tyler and Brianna discuss removing me from their wedding photos, I tried desperately to convince myself it was just anger talking. A careless moment, a young man overwhelmed. But the days that followed proved I had been far too naive. One Friday evening, right after I got off a long shift at the West substation, my phone rang. Tyler. His voice was tight, too tight, covered with a thin layer of forced calm I knew better than anyone. Dad, can we talk for a minute, he said. I sat down at the dinner table, cracked open a warm soda and murmured, Go ahead. I need your help. Just one time. I didn't respond. I let him talk. The wedding deposit is due. The resort wants $15,000 more to hold the date. I asked him one single question. Why aren't you paying it? You said you could handle it. He didn't answer right away. The pause was too long, too telling. My crypto's just in a weird phase, Tyler said, choosing his words like a man pitching to investors. But I'll repay you as soon as the market recovers. Just a few weeks. Crypto. He'd bragged about it plenty, big plays, riding the wave, staking profits. I didn't understand all the terminology, but I understood one thing very clearly. If my son needed $15,000 from his father, then whatever he'd lost was far more than he dared admit. Ty, I asked quietly, how deep in debt are you? He snapped back, immediately defensive. Not much. I just need you to help temporarily. I took a slow breath. Son, I can't hand you $15,000 because you want a luxury wedding. Tyler's tone flipped like a switch. You don't get it, he said sharply. You don't understand the pressure I'm under. You don't understand the world I live in now. The world you live in, I repeated. Yes, he said, voice rising. I want a perfect wedding, a beautiful day, a day without things people will talk about. You need to understand that. You don't belong in that world. He said it like he wasn't even aware those words came from his own mouth. But I heard every syllable, every heartbeat of insult behind it. I walked to the window, stared out into the dark patch of forest behind my cabin, and kept my voice steady. You can deny me in front of your friends, but you can't use my name for your financial mess. Tyler ignored that and went back to the only question he cared about. So, are you helping me or not? No. I said it clearly. Firmly. Final. Not $1. A sharp breath came through the phone, then the line went dead. Cold. Clean. Final. Like he believed I had just ruined his wedding. 3 days later, I received an email from the resort sent to me by mistake. Subject: guarantor confirmation required. Guarantor: I wasn't the guarantor of anything. I opened the attached PDF. Wedding contract. Lowell Chambers. Signatures. Bride Brianna Lowell. Groom Tyler Chambers. Financial guarantor Floyd Chambers. My name. But not my handwriting. The signature leaned right, slanted, shaky, the way Tyler used to sign school attendance sheets in 11th grade. My stomach twisted. Tyler had forged my signature. Not on a note to excuse him from class, not on a permission slip, but on a financial contract worth tens of thousands of dollars. I closed the file immediately, but I still felt filthy, like something sticky and rotten had touched my hands. A memory flashed Tyler at 6 years old, standing beside my old truck, Lego paint still on his fingers, asking, "Dad, does your signature look like a snake?" Now he wasn't asking. He was using it and using it wrong. That afternoon I drove toward Bozeman, not to yell, not to hit him, but to look him in the eye and ask how far he'd let himself fall. I reached their apartment and knocked. No answer. I knocked harder. Finally, the door cracked open and Brianna appeared. Red lipstick, immaculate makeup, and eyes that could freeze molten steel. "What are you doing here?" she asked without an ounce of respect. "I need to see Tyler." "He's busy," she said instantly, like she'd rehearsed it. I held the door before she could close it. "I know he used my name on the wedding contract." She didn't flinch, didn't deny, didn't show guilt. She simply shrugged. "He did what he had to do to make the wedding perfect. You should be proud instead of complicating everything. Forging a legal signature is fraud." I said, my voice dropping lower than thunder. She smiled, small, dismissive. "Who cares? It's a wedding contract, not federal paperwork." "Fraud is fraud," I said calmly. She tilted her head. "You really don't understand how hard Tyler's working to keep your working-class image from ruining our big day, do you?" I stepped back. A slow, painful step. Her words weren't new. I'd heard versions of them whispered all year, but hearing them come from her mouth, sharp, proud, poisonous, made them real. "So you're not paying right?" she asked. "I don't pay for something I didn't sign." She sighed dramatically and slammed the door. Behind it, I heard Tyler's voice. "Why did you talk to my dad like that? Let me explain to him." Then, Brianna hissed, not loud, but clear as ice. "Tyler, if you let him interfere one more time, I swear there won't be a wedding. I'm not marrying into some broke blue-collar family." Silence. A long, crushing silence. Then Tyler's voice, small, defeated. "Okay, I'll handle it." That was the moment something died between us. Not a misunderstanding, not a disagreement, not Brianna's influence alone. A betrayal, plain and cold. That night, back in my cabin, I opened the steel box under Laura's framed picture. Inside were the things I'd protected for decades. Her will. 30 years of savings. Account numbers nobody knew but me. Documents that could move mountains if ever misused. I placed my hand on them and whispered, "If he wants to learn this lesson, then he'll learn it the way a lineman's son has to learn, through fire and consequences." I turned off the lamp, and something inside me switched off with it. The banning letter. Winter came early to Montana that year. Frost clung thick to the power lines, wind howled across the cabin roof like someone knocking in the dead of night. But the real cold wasn't outside. It was inside my chest, A slow, heavy freeze that began the day I saw my own forged signature on that wedding contract. I kept hoping Tyler would call, that he'd show up, say he made a mistake, say he'd gone too far. But he didn't call, didn't text, didn't stop by, just silence. The kind of silence that comes right before a storm breaks open. And then on the second Monday of December, something happened that told me my son had crossed the final line. That night I was sitting on the porch repairing the old Christmas light strings Laura loved. Snow dusted the railing. My breath came out in pale clouds. Then I heard an engine at the end of the road. A delivery kid stepped out, walked up my drive, and handed me a large envelope from Jackson Hole Winter Resort, the very place Tyler and Brianna were getting married. I thought maybe it was an itinerary, or information for family guests. I tore it open. Inside was no invitation. Just a single sheet of paper. Short. Cold. Guest access update. Floyd Chambers. Entry. Not authorized effective December 23, 2024. I read it once, twice, 3 times. Entry. Not authorized. I was banned. From my own son's wedding. I forced myself to breathe, forced myself not to crush the paper in my hands. I called Tyler. No answer. I left a message. Ty, I just got something from the resort. Call me back, please. Nothing. Not a word. I grabbed my coat, got in my truck, and drove straight toward Jackson Hole. The mountain roads were iced over the night sky, pitch black, but none of that mattered. I needed to know what the hell was happening. When I reached the resort, a blast of wind hit me hard, snow stinging my face like needles. Golden lights shimmered along the entrance, beautiful, warm, expensive. And right beside the guard station stood a brand new wooden sign. I walked toward it, slowly, afraid I already knew what I would see. Black paint, bold letters. Do not admit, Floyd Chambers. I stopped dead. My name, first and last, posted in public for every wedding guest to see. I touched the sign. The wood was new, the paint still tacky. The guard stepped out, shifting nervously. Sir, are you Mr. Chambers? Yes. I'm sorry. This is a directive from management. I have to follow the list. The list, I asked, my voice dropping low. He handed me a printed sheet. At the top was an email. From Brianna Lowell. Under no circumstances should Mr. Floyd Chambers be admitted to the wedding grounds. He is not to appear in ceremony, photos, rehearsal events, or receptions. If he attempts entry, contact me immediately. No signature, no courtesy, not a shred of respect for the man whose son she was marrying. Just cold, surgical elimination. I read the first line again. Under no circumstances, no matter what. By any means necessary, like I was a threat, a stain, like I didn't belong anywhere near my own blood. I looked at the guard. You said this came from management. He swallowed hard, then leaned in. It came from the bride, but it didn't look like a normal request. He hesitated, then made a choice. Sir, there's something you should see. He reached into his drawer and pulled out another printed email. This one stamped, for staff only. I'm not supposed to show this, he whispered. But I don't think this is right. He handed it to me. I read, and every sentence cut deeper than the last. Mr. Chambers appears poor, outdated, and unsuitable for the image of our family. Do not allow him near any areas with cameras, guests, or wedding activity. Poor, outdated, unsuitable. A woman who knew Tyler loved his father and still chose to erase me. Not just from the photos, from the day itself. I asked the guard quietly, does Tyler know about this? He shook his head. He hasn't arrived today, but the bride said, quote, all decisions are finalized with the groom. Sir, I don't think that's true. That's why I showed you the email. His eyes held something I hadn't seen in Tyler's in a long time. Sympathy. I looked back at the wooden sign, my name standing alone in the cold, stripped of dignity, turned into an embarrassment. I wasn't angry because they banned me. I was angry because my son said nothing. No warning, no explanation, no apology. He let her speak for him. He let her decide my place in his life. The boy who once bragged about me fixing the lights in his kindergarten class now letting his fiancée erase me like chalk off a sidewalk. On the drive back to my cabin, snow started falling heavier. Thick, fast, blinding. But inside my mind, everything became clear. Sharp. My son was about to marry into a foundation built on two things: falsehood and fraud. And if I stayed silent, if I let that wedding go forward as they planned, then Tyler would believe this was normal, that disloyalty was acceptable, that ingratitude was a way of life. I pulled over on the side of the mountain road, snow piling up on the hood of my truck. I stared ahead into the dark. Then I spoke aloud to no one, and to the only person who ever understood me. Laura, if I don't step in now, he will drown in their world. And I won't let that happen. The wind roared through the pines. Frost coated the windshield in seconds. I started the engine. My hands didn't shake. Not anymore. And right there in that snowstorm above Jackson Hole, I made a decision that would change my son's life forever. I would not let this wedding happen. Not in lies, not in shame, not on their terms. This time, the storm would come from me. Floyd withdraws the contract. Christmas Eve morning, December 24th. The air in Jackson Hole was so cold it turned every breath into white smoke the moment you stepped outside. From the ridge where the power lines cut across the mountain slope, I looked down at the resort, a glittering pocket of wealth tucked between frozen pines, a place buzzing with preparations for the dream wedding of my son and his spotless, image-obsessed fiancée. But for me, this was the morning I decided to cut every wire tying my son to a life built on lies. I wasn't going there as a guest, or as the father of the groom. I was going as something much more dangerous. A subcontractor who'd maintained the resort's electrical infrastructure for nearly 12 years. I knew every line, every breaker, every contract clause the Lowell family never bothered to read. And I knew exactly which switch to flip if I needed to end the charade. 7:15 a.m. I stepped into the resort's technical office. The Christmas shift assistant nodded at me. "Morning, Mr. Chambers. It's just you on site today. Everyone else is helping prep the wedding in the North Hall." "I know," I said. I sat down, opened my laptop, pulled out the folder I brought from my cabin. Inside was the wedding contract Tyler had signed, the one where he forged my name as the financial guarantor. I'd read it 3 times the night before. This morning I read it again. But not as a betrayed father, as a contractor who'd signed dozens of resort project agreements and knew when a document was rotten. I listed every violation. The financial guarantor signature didn't match the ID on file. Tyler's billing address was a carbon copy of Brianna's used to obtain rate adjustments. The income verification PDF had a falsified modification date. The deposit marked paid was actually declined, yet the Lowell family demanded it be marked pending verification. In other words, this contract was a silk tablecloth draped over a dumpster fire, and I was sitting in the one room where I had the authority to pull the cloth back. 8:02 a.m. I logged into the internal resort system. I wrote an email to the CFO and the head of events, subject request for funding withdrawal. Violation of contract terms. I attached proof of my forged signature, proof of falsified financial information, proof of failed payment, proof of misrepresentation by the Lowell family. And I ended with, "As the listed guarantor without my consent, I hereby revoke all financial responsibility. Contract is void, effective immediately." I clicked send. One button, but the weight of it could collapse their entire wedding. 8:34 a.m. The project manager called me. His voice was tight. "Mr. Chambers, we reviewed everything. You're absolutely right. This contract violates multiple financial policies. I know I said steady as steel. That means—" He hesitated. "All wedding-related services will be terminated. Immediately. By regulation." "I understand." I said it calmly, but deep down I wanted them to see the truth. The truth Tyler refused to see. 8:50 a.m. A system-wide alert flashed on the monitor. Wedding services, immediate suspension. Lighting audio venue, heating bar service. Unpaid decor. Catering overtime. Photography setup. Each line was stamped, void, payment fraud. I read every item, and each one felt like a nail sealing the coffin on Brianna's perfect facade. 9:15 a.m. A technician sprinted down the corridor, pale-faced. "Mr. Chambers, you need to see this." He handed me a resort tablet showing live internal cameras. On screen, decorators taking down wreaths they'd hung at 3 a.m. Bar staff packing up unopened liquor. Audio crews removing ceiling speakers. Stage lights powering down one by one. The banquet kitchen shutting its doors. In the center of the North Hall, Brianna stood in her white robe screaming, "No, you can't turn that off. Put that back. Who gave you permission?" The event manager bowed stiffly. "Miss Lowell, the contract is invalid. We cannot provide services without payment." "Our payment is complete," she roared. Tyler's card was declined. "And the guarantor has withdrawn. We are required to mark the contract as fraudulent." Brianna froze, then spun toward her bridesmaids. "Call Tyler. Call him right now." But their faces showed no sympathy, only fear, shock, and a little too much fascination, the kind people feel when a queen loses her crown. The young technician beside me whispered, "Mr. Chambers, did you do all this?" I didn't answer right away. I looked out the window at the falling snow, soft, gentle, like the Christmas mornings Laura used to love. Then I said, "When a house is built out of rotten wood, you don't have to push hard for it to collapse. I barely touched it." He swallowed, then nodded slowly. "Well, sir, they treated you badly. They treated the staff badly, too. If this is your way of getting justice, honestly, I think you did the right thing." I gave him a small, hollow smile. "I'm not doing this to punish them," I said quietly. "I'm doing this to wake my son up." 10:05 a.m. I stepped out onto the rear deck overlooking the chaos below. Tyler wasn't there. He hadn't shown up all morning. But when he finally arrived, he would see no aisle. No lights, no music, no heated venue, no catering, no bar, no fairy tale. Just the truth. A wedding built on deception can only end one way. 10:17 a.m. I sent one final message to management. "If anyone asks, tell them I withdrew because I never signed. Because my name was forged. Because I will not support a wedding built on dishonor." Then I powered down the system, closed my toolkit, stepped out into the December air. A gust of winter wind cut across my face like a thin blade. And I knew as surely as I've ever known anything that this moment felt exactly like pulling a main breaker on a city grid. Except today, I had cut the power to my son's wedding. The wedding collapses. The snow fell harder that afternoon, thick, heavy, the kind that makes Jackson Hole look like someone scrubbed the whole world clean. But inside the wedding venue, nothing was clean. There was no magic, no winter fairy tale. Only chaos, raw, exposed, and impossible to hide behind silk napkins, gold candles, or Instagram hashtags. Guests began arriving around 1:30 p.m. Shiny SUVs, fox fur coats, designer boots. Every one of them dressed the way the Lowell family wanted the world to see them, as old money, even though not one of them had ever lived like old money. But when they stepped into the lobby, the illusion cracked on the first second. Darkness. No string lights, No warm glows, no bar setup, no music drifting through the hall. Just bare tables, half-open boxes, and decor still sitting exactly where the staff had dropped it when services were cut. A woman gasped loudly. "Why does this look unfinished?" A bridesmaid darted forward, yanking a curtain over the pile of dismantled gear in the corner. It only made people whisper louder. No food. "Where's the bartender? Why are the lights off? My photos look awful. Why isn't the venue lighting on?" The questions buzzed like hornets trapped in a jar. In the center of the hall stood Brianna. She was a sight, a crystal-studded wedding gown, stretching behind her like a peacock tail. But her face was flushed, twisted hair falling from its pins. She was screaming at the staff, "Why aren't the lights on? Why isn't the bar set? Where is the decor? What is going on?" The event manager, voice trembling, tried to explain. "Miss Lowell, the contract—" "I don't care about the contract," she shrieked. "This is my wedding day." A bridesmaid whispered into her phone, live streaming, "Oh my God, this is a wedding disaster. This is insane." Guests pulled out their phones, recorded everything, captured every angle. The whispers grew sharper. Did they not pay? How does a luxury wedding run out of power? This family is odd. Tyler arrived around 2:10 p.m. He looked a mess, vest, crooked tie, uneven face, pale as if he'd sprinted from his car. He stopped dead when he saw the wreckage. What happened? Why aren't the lights on? Where's the bar? Why ask the resort?" Brianna screamed at him. "They cut us off because of your father. Because of that man you keep defending." Tyler's face drained. But he said nothing. He just stared at the floor like he couldn't stand to hear the truth. Then it happened. A sound tech, overwhelmed by guests complaining, plugged a mic cable into the wrong port, a backup system that automatically played audio test files. Except someone sometime earlier had accidentally recorded over one of those files. Suddenly all the speakers in the hall blasted a voice. Not music, not a sound check. Brianna's voice. Cold, clear, undeniable. "He's nothing but a trash worker. I'm embarrassed to call him my father-in-law." The entire hall froze. Not one breath, not one movement. Then more, "I don't want him in any wedding photos. Not a single one. Do you understand, Tyler? Do you understand?" A bridesmaid clapped her hand over her mouth. Guests stared wide-eyed. A man muttered, "Did she really say that?" Brianna shrieked, "Turn that off! Turn it off now!" But the panic only made the mic continue another few seconds. "I'm not marrying into that blue-collar family. I want a perfect wedding. No. Garbage." And then silence, heavy as iron. Everyone looked at Brianna, then at Tyler, then at each other. The mask had shattered. Publicly. Irreversibly. Brutally. Tyler stuttered. "Bri, you didn't mean that, right? You were just— Don't you dare take their side!" she screamed, voice cracking. "You promised me he wouldn't show up. You promised me." But she never finished that sentence. Because outside the hall a sharp car horn blasted. Everyone turned toward the glass doors. Two men stood in the parking lot. Not wedding guests, not friends. Debt collectors. One was thin, wearing a worn leather jacket, holding a stack of papers. The other was tattooed from wrist to elbow. They motioned for Tyler. "Come here, we need a word." Brianna screamed, "Don't go out there." "Tyler, who are they?" Tyler hesitated, but the men's eyes, cold, hard, unblinking, pulled him out the door. Later, a staffer told me exactly what the security camera picked up. The thin man spoke first. "You borrowed from us 3 times. You said crypto profits would cover it. Crypto tanked." A pause. "And today's the deadline." Tyler trembled. "Please. It's my wedding day." The tattooed man shrugged. "Your wedding isn't our problem. We're here to warn you politely." He leaned closer. But if you don't settle this week, someone else is going to come talk to your new in-laws." Tyler went ghost white. Inside the hall, Brianna screamed through the glass. "Tyler, what is this? How much do you owe? What did you do?" Guests gathered recording. Bridesmaids live-streamed. "Oh my God, the groom has loan sharks." No one helped Tyler. No one helped Brianna. The wedding was no longer falling apart. It was disintegrating. And then Tyler did something no one expected. He ran. He ran out of the lot past the line of evergreens into the woods behind the resort like a boy running after shattering a window he can't afford to fix. Gasps, whispers, shocked laughter. The wedding was over. Utterly, completely, spectacularly ruined. Meanwhile, in my cabin deep in the pines, I sat by the window with a cup of coffee gone cold. I watched the snow drift down. Soft, slow, peaceful. A cruel contrast to the wreckage unfolding miles away. And I whispered, "Laura, our son needed to see this. He needed to see the world he chose swallow him whole, before it swallowed him forever." I didn't smile. I didn't celebrate. I just felt a stillness, a cold, quiet kind of justice settle over my bones, like a streetlight going out in a snowstorm. No explosion, no spectacle, just darkness. And I knew when truth finally steps into the light of Christmas Eve, no mask survives it. Not Brianna's, not the Lowells, not even Tyler's. When dusk settled over the Tetons, Jackson Hole sank into that heavy purple light that always comes with Christmas Eve. But tonight inside the wedding venue, there was no music, no laughter, no champagne bottles popping. Only footsteps hurried anxious, the rustle of silk dresses, and people whispering excuses as they hurried to escape before the disaster swallowed them too. The wedding was over. Nobody said the word canceled. They didn't need to. Everyone could see it for themselves. 6:45 p.m. The bridesmaids. The same girls who laughed beside Brianna, who bragged on live streams about their dresses, their jewelry, their luxury wedding weekend, fell silent. They slipped off their heels, grabbed their coats, and moved toward the exit like people fleeing a chain reaction fire. "Let's go. There's no point staying. I don't want to get caught in this mess. She's lost her mind." One of them whispered, thinking Brianna couldn't hear. She thought she was a princess in a castle. Turns out the castle was cardboard. Brianna spun around. Eyes bloodshot, mascara melting down her cheeks like ashes. "What did you say?" "Say it again." But the bridesmaids were already gone, door slamming hard behind them. No one looked back. Abandonment hit Brianna for the first time that day, and it hit her like a boulder dropped from a cliff. And she crumbled. Guests couldn't take it either. They whispered as they rushed out, "There's nothing left here. No food, no music, no groom." I didn't come to watch a meltdown. Luxury cars fled the parking lot like migrating birds escaping winter. The hall emptied. Brianna stood alone, surrounded by bare tables, half-lit sconces, and the cold echo of everything she lost in a single afternoon. She trembled, but pride decays quickly when humiliation takes its place. Around 7:30 p.m., Tyler returned to the parking lot, his suit-wrinkled tie, undone shoes covered in slush. He looked like someone who had run through the woods in panic. Because he had. He didn't go inside. He didn't call Brianna. He didn't demand answers. He just stood in the snow-covered lot, shaking eyes, searching for something. Searching for me. Security stepped forward. "Mr. Chambers, the venue is closed." No one. "Where's my dad?" Tyler asked, voice unsteady. "Did my father come here?" "He arrived earlier," the guard said. But we had to turn him away because Tyler's eyes drifted to the wooden board near the gate. He froze. Staff later told me he walked toward it slowly, like a man approaching his own verdict. He placed his hand on the painted words, "Do not admit," Floyd Chambers. His hands started trembling, his mouth too. He whispered barely audible, "Brianna did this." The guards exchanged a glance. They didn't answer. They didn't have to. Their silence told him everything. Tyler shut his eyes tight as if someone had struck him across the face. The saddest part, he wasn't angry at the person who banned me. He was angry at himself. Because he knew. He let someone else speak a cruelty he didn't have the courage to say out loud. His fists clenched until his knuckles turned white. Tyler begged a staff member to let him see the security footage. They weren't supposed to. But the young technician, the same kid who handed me the internal email that morning, let him watch a few clips. The clip where Brianna barked, "I don't want him in any wedding photos." The clip where she called me a trash worker. I'm ashamed to call him family. And the clip where Tyler stood silent. Said nothing. Defended no one. Tyler heard his own silence. And for the first time in his life, he understood that silence can be betrayal. He stepped back, covering his face. He didn't cry. Tyler never cried easily. Even when his mother died, he cried 3 minutes, then swallowed everything and went still. But tonight, the shaking in his breath wasn't tears. It was the realization that he had turned into someone he himself would hate. 8:12 p.m. Tyler stepped out into the freezing air, snow under his feet, sky black as coal dust. He pulled out his phone, hesitated, then dialed. My phone rang just as I was placing another log into the stove. The cabin glowed warm in sharp contrast to the storm outside. I looked at the screen. Tyler. I let it ring once, twice, then answered. "Dad?" Tyler's voice was barely more than a breath. If you're there, He stopped to steady himself. "I think I ruined everything." I didn't answer right away. I let the silence sit, let him feel the weight of it. Snow crackled through the phone line. Wind howled in the background. I could hear his footsteps grinding in the snow, slow, shaky, lost. Finally, I said, my voice low and even. "Tyler, find your own way back. Just like you pushed me out of your life. No yelling, no anger, no cruelty. Just truth, cold, hard, unbreakable." On the other end, Tyler didn't sob, didn't plead. He whispered, "I understand." I replied, "Call me when you're ready. Not when you need something, when you finally see where you're standing." I hung up. For the first time in 26 years of being his father, I hung up first. Outside, the snow kept falling. Not wild, not violent, just falling quietly, erasing the footprints of anyone who had wandered too far off the path. Christmas Eve 2024 passed like a deep-cut winter couldn't numb. And when the new year arrived, the remains of that perfect wedding lay scattered across Jackson Hole like cold ash. But the consequences didn't end there. Not for Brianna. Not for the Lowell family. And certainly not for Tyler, the son who never understood the price of stepping into someone else's world without carrying his own soul with him. January 2025. Brianna disappeared from Tyler's life a few days after the scandal. No goodbye, no apology, no explanation. She blocked his number, deleted every wedding post across her social media in a single night, and moved back to the Lowell home in Portland. Worse than that, her entire family blamed Tyler. No one defended him. No one mentioned that she was the one who banned me from the wedding. No one spoke of how she mocked my job or humiliated me on camera. They simply said Tyler caused the chaos. Without him, the wedding would have been flawless. He dragged our reputation down. To them, Tyler was the perfect scapegoat, a shield to hide the truth that Brianna was made of polish, not substance. Because they lived in a world where accountability didn't exist. They only needed someone weaker to carry the blame. And they chose my son. February 2025. Tyler moved out of the apartment they once shared. He packed boxes, took down the studio shot couple aesthetic photos, deleted most of the curated friends Brianna added to make them look high status. The apartment, once staged like a showroom, looked more like Tyler as he shut the door for the last time. No scented candles, No gold-lettered canvas quotes, no crystal glasses for important guests. Just his work shirts, a few old hoodies he wore back when he still lived with me, and a couple of things his mother bought during his high school years. Before leaving, he stared into the empty apartment and whispered, "I forgot who I was when I lived here." March 2025. It was a pale morning in Helena. Soft sunlight. Just enough wind to ripple the lake outside my cabin. I had just pulled on my work boots ready to check the south transmission line when I heard a car pull up. A silver sedan, an old one. Not the expensive model Brianna once insisted he needed to match her image. Tyler stepped out. Thinner. Dark circles around his eyes. But for the first time in months, he looked real. No forced posture, no polished words. He walked to the cabin steps and stopped a few feet from me. "Dad." He swallowed hard, trying to keep his voice steady. "Can we talk?" I looked at him for a long moment. I didn't open the door wide. I didn't rush to hug him. I didn't look triumphant or wounded. I simply said, "Tyler, I'll talk to you. If you take responsibility for everything you've done. No excuses, no deflection, no blaming anyone." He lowered his head. The wind carried the scent of young pine across the yard. "I know," he said quietly. "I'm not here for forgiveness. I'm here because I need to understand what I lost." I stepped back, leaving the door half open. "If you're truly ready, come in." Tyler entered the cabin he grew up in. His eyes drifted around the room to the old wooden table by the stove where his mother used to read, where I once fixed his toys. He didn't say a word. It was as if the cabin itself was reminding him of the life he had walked away from. I poured him a mug of hot coffee. He didn't drink. He just stared at the floor for a long while. Then he spoke. "Dad, I was wrong. From the very beginning." His voice didn't break. He didn't cry. It was the voice of a man finally seeing himself in an unwarped mirror. He told me everything. He had lost more than $30,000 in the October crypto crash. He hid the debt because he feared Brianna would look down on him. He let her control him because he believed marrying her meant moving up in life. He stayed silent when she insulted me because he was terrified of losing the wedding. And then finally he whispered, "I didn't protect you. I didn't protect this family. I didn't even protect myself. I didn't respond right away. I wanted him to empty everything before I said a word." Then Tyler reached into his coat pocket and pulled out something small, a worn leather notebook, edges curled. "Dad," he said softly, "I found this in a box Mom left for me." I took it. A small brown journal. I recognized it instantly. Laura's handwriting diary. Tyler opened to the last page and handed it to me. Her handwriting delicate, steady. "If one day Tyler is pulled into the glitter of another world, I pray Floyd will be strong enough to hold him steady. I fear he will chase what shines and forget the man who lit every light for him." Tyler rested his hand lightly on the page as if afraid to damage it. I didn't know she wrote this. I didn't know what she feared. But now, I do. He looked up, eyes red but not crying. "Dad, you're the only person who never left me, even when I left you first." Inside me, something warm stirred, slow, deep quiet. Not victory, not satisfaction. Just the feeling of a door once slammed shut, slowly opening again. I placed my hand on the journal, then gently on his shoulder. "Tyler, I never needed you to be perfect. I just needed you to be true. And today, you're starting to be." He took a long breath, the kind a man takes when he finally feels air in his chest again. I looked out the window, snow falling lightly, sky clearing bit by bit. And I knew this was the beginning of Tyler's redemption arc. Not loud, not dramatic, just real. And real was enough. Healing didn't start with a hug, or a dramatic apology, or a sunrise that magically fixed everything. After that night in the cabin, the night Tyler admitted who he had become, the night he read his mother's journal, and finally saw himself with clear, unflinching eyes, there was only one thing left between us, a willingness to begin again. And beginnings are slow, uneven, uncomfortable. But beginnings are also honest. May 2025. Tyler made a decision no one expected, not even himself. He applied for a temporary position at Northwestern Energy, the company I had worked for nearly 3 decades. The company he once looked down on. The world he once believed was beneath him. He stood in my cabin doorway that morning, hands in his pockets, shoulders slightly hunched. Not out of shame, but out of humility. Dad, I want to understand the world you lived in. I want to know the man Mom trusted more than anyone. I didn't soften my voice. Tyler, if you apply, I won't help you. No favors, no phone calls, no special treatment. He nodded like someone accepting a verdict. I don't want help. I want to earn it. The lowest rung, Northwestern Energy hired him as a ground man, the very bottom of the crew hierarchy. No glamour, no desk, no prestige, just hauling 30-40 pounds of equipment, standing knee-deep in mud, ice, or heat, handing tools up the pole at the exact second they're needed, learning voltage safety angles inch by inch, mistake by mistake. No one cared he was my son. Out here, you are only worth the work you can do. And the first week almost broke him. His palms blistered, his back locked up. His sleep was shallow from soreness. He limped more than he walked. One afternoon he told his foreman, I didn't know it was this hard. The foreman shrugged. No one knows, but your father does. Tyler went quiet. My name didn't embarrass him that day. It humbled him. October 2025. The storm. Montana was hit with an early blizzard, the kind that rips shingles off roofs and snaps power poles like toothpicks. Every crew was activated, and for the first time in years, Tyler and I were assigned to the same team. He rode shotgun. I drove truck number 47 through 60 mph winds. Neither of us spoke, but the silence wasn't hostile. It was cautious, like two men rebuilding the bridge they once burned. At 1:20 a.m., the radio crackled. SUV trapped under a downed pole. Driver pinned. Possible live wire. Nearest crew respond immediately. We were nearest. I pressed the accelerator. When we arrived, the scene was brutal. A steel pole snapped in half. The SUV crushed like a tin can. Glass everywhere. Live wires spitting sparks in the wind. Floyd, check voltage. Tyler, assist your father. Tyler trembled for a split second. But he didn't step back. He followed me into the storm like the little boy who once held my hand crossing an icy parking lot. I tested the line, confirmed it was dead. Then I shouted, It's safe, move in. We pried open the door. Tyler slipped on ice. I grabbed his arm before he fell. Together we pulled out the driver, a man in his 50s, freezing and terrified. I put my coat around him. Tyler wrapped him in an emergency blanket. The man clutched my hand. God bless you. Both of you. Tyler heard that, and he stared at me with a kind of respect he had never shown before, not even as a child. Not admiration, not guilt. Respect. The kind one man gives another man he finally understands. Where the breaking finally happens. After the rescue, the crew climbed back into the truck. Except Tyler. He stayed outside, leaning against the door, shoulders, trembling, breath turning to white smoke. When he finally lifted his hands to his face, he cried. Not loudly, not dramatically, not for show. Quietly, privately, like a man grieving the version of himself he used to be. He wasn't crying because the storm scared him. He was crying because he finally understood I was never the burden, never the embarrassment. Never the thing dragging him down. I was the man who showed up in storms, in silence, in sacrifice every single time, even when he didn't. Dawn. By sunrise, he climbed into the truck beside me. He sat there breathing slowly, collecting the courage to speak. Finally, he whispered, "I never knew you were this strong. Not just strong. Good." I didn't look at him. "Tyler, there's a lot you didn't know, but you're learning." He nodded. No excuses, no drama, just acceptance. Every week after. From that storm forward, Tyler came to the cabin every week. Not to apologize, not to earn forgiveness, not to make things right, just to be present, to be a son again. He helped me split firewood, fix the fence, patch the metal roofing the wind had ripped open, sort tools, clean the gutters. No speeches, no emotional outbursts, just small, consistent things, the kind a man does when he's trying to build a life instead of pretend one. It wasn't grand, it wasn't dramatic, but it was real, and that mattered more than anything else. What forgiveness really is. That winter I learned something I should have learned years ago. Forgiveness isn't forgetting. Forgiveness isn't pretending nothing happened. Forgiveness is giving someone room to prove their change is real. And Tyler was proving it. Slowly, steadily, with calloused hands and quieter eyes. By December 2025, I knew our story wasn't finished, but it had turned down a different road. A road without Brianna, without the Lowell house of mirrors, without lies dipped in gold foil. Just two men, one older, one younger, learning how to stand beside each other again. And that was how we reached the final chapter. I used to believe Montana winters never changed, that the snow would always fall the same way, that the wind would always tear across the cabin walls like a warning, that silence in December would always feel like an empty room. But Christmas 2025 felt different. Not because the season changed, but because my son had. A year had passed since the wedding collapsed, since the lies cracked open, since the front row seats to humiliation and truth left him standing alone in a world he was never meant to belong to. And step by step, brick by brick, Tyler had begun rebuilding a life that was actually his. No help from the Lowells, no shortcuts, no borrowed shine. He paid off the first chunk of his debt, small but honest. He rented a tiny room on Grand Avenue, cheap, old, clean, and paid for with his own hands. He carried only 3 things with him: his mother's old coat, a $30 hot plate, and a head finally willing to rest on something real. And now, on this quiet December evening, he was hosting Christmas dinner in my cabin. For the first time in his life, he invited me. A simpler table. When I stepped inside the cabin, I didn't see the boy who once chased illusions of wealth or status. I saw a young man genuinely trying to love without performing. The table was simple. A roasted chicken, mashed potatoes, a pot of soup. Tyler admitted he'd failed twice before getting right. The kitchen smelled warm, not fancy, not luxurious, just warm. The kind of warmth that can only come from effort. Tyler stood by the window, hands tucked awkwardly into his pockets. "I don't know if tonight's perfect," he said, nervous but sincere, "but I know it's real." I nodded. "You never needed to be perfect, Tyler. Just real." After dinner, Tyler disappeared into the small bedroom. When he returned, he carried a wooden box, old, worn, the corner still stained with the paint. We spilled the summer he turned 17. I recognized it instantly. The box I built him during his first storm season. Back when he said, "Dad, when I grow up, I want to be strong like you." Tyler placed the box in my hands. His voice lowered, steady, weighted with meaning. "I kept this all these years, but I never understood what it really meant." I opened it. Inside lay my old electrical gloves, cracked stiff with age, fading at the fingers. I thought he had thrown them out long ago. Tyler's eyes softened. "You once told me a man isn't measured by the car he drives or the seat he gets at a wedding." His voice tightened. "But by whether he's willing to put his hands in danger to protect someone else." I felt something in my chest shift. Something I hadn't let myself feel in a long time. And before I could speak, he continued, "Dad, I want to start over. I want to be the man Mom would be proud of, and the man you deserve to have beside you." The room went still, warm, full. For the first time in years, the cabin felt like a home again. I set a hand on his shoulder. "Tyler, you took down the sign that banned me from your wedding, so now it's my turn. I'm taking down the sign that banned you from my heart." Tyler bowed his head. A tear fell onto the old gloves, washing away a year of mistakes in a single drop. The light. Laura left behind. We said nothing more. We walked outside to the porch where Laura's old Christmas lights, the ones that used to make this cabin glow brighter than any house in the valley, lay tangled beneath the snow. After she died, I boxed them up. I couldn't bear the sight of them. Tyler knelt and slowly untangled each strand, checking every bulb, every connection, as if touching a memory he finally felt worthy of holding. I picked up the last piece, and together we strung the lights along the porch roof, just like we used to when he was a boy trembling on the ladder. Tyler stepped back, nodding. "Go on, Dad, flip the switch." I did. A sharp click, and then the lights burst alive in red, green, and gold, scattering color across the snow like tiny stars. The cabin glowed as if Laura herself had turned the lights back on. Tyler didn't move. The reflection in his eyes wasn't the boy who ran from himself or the man who let pride destroy a wedding. It was a grown man, steady, honest, unadorned, standing in the light he helped repair. "Dad," he whispered, "I know I have a long way to go, but tonight, thank you for giving me the chance." I answered, "Not a chance, Tyler. A path. You walked it. I just turned the lights on." Snow drifted. The wind softened. Two men, once broken apart, stood as father and son again under the light of a Christmas that finally belonged to both of them. Not a triumph, not revenge, not punishment, but something rarer, gratitude, earned, not declared. And that is how the year ended, not with noise, not with spectacle, but with the quiet return of a son and the steady forgiveness of a father. If you believe respect must be earned through actions, not excuses, if you believe family isn't about perfection, but about finding your way back after the storm, then please, like this video, share it with someone who needs hope. Comment your thoughts below and subscribe to join me for more true family justice stories where real love always finds its light again.